Welcome to Radio Rocco. I'm Jason Bryan and you're listening to Chalk Talk. Radio Rocco is bringing you the fresh news and insights about telecoms roaming and interconnect, as we do in our reports. Over the next 15 minutes, we'll be talking to you about the EU roaming regulation. This is the second of a 5-part series into the regulation, with an aim to help you understand what it's all about and what the implications are for mobile network operators and mobile subscribers using roaming. In this second episode, we review the latest EU roaming regulation, Fair Use Policies. What might appear to be a simple regulation is in fact quite complex and has a few surprising features both for MNOs and their subscribers. From the 15th of June 2017, the way we communicate in the EU while travelling has changed drastically. Extra roaming charges don't apply, but as always with roaming regulation, there are a few things to be aware of. The new tariffs are called Roam Like at Home, and what it means is that if you're on a tariff that supports roaming, the same tariff conditions you have at home will apply while roaming abroad at no extra charge. If you're not on a tariff that offers roaming, you will be able to change to a Roam Like at Home tariff within 24 hours and start feeling the benefits of the regulation immediately. Every EU roaming supplier must offer these tariffs without exception. However, in extreme circumstances, there may be roaming charges applied. Some regulators may allow roaming suppliers to add small surcharges. What does it mean? In basic terms, the mobile phone package you have as an EU subscriber allows you at no extra cost, no extra bundles or charges to roam in the EU. This still includes UK, by the way, until 2019. Just check before you travel that the package is a Roam Like at Home tariff. More about tariff plans later, but first let's hear from Maria.
How would it work for a student from an EU country who is studying in another EU country or traveling around multiple countries? If my understanding is correct, the no additional roaming charges rule applies only if you stay for a limited period in another EU country.
Maria is correct. In some circumstances, your roaming supplier may limit your usage in the EU by applying a fair use policy. This is allowed, and they should notify you of this in advance. To prevent abusive or anomalous roaming behavior, MNOs will set limits to the usage of the EU roaming services that subscribers can consume. Why is this? There are actually two very good reasons. One, while the subscriber, let's say it's Maria, is not paying extra for roaming than what she is charged to her normal domestic tariff, the MNO which she gets her service from is still charged something from every other MNO that Maria is visiting, what we call in the industry wholesale charges or IoTs. So if Maria decides to take a tour of all European countries for a year, she's going to only pay her domestic rates. Therefore, what she pays is as if she was at home. But her MNO will pay wholesale rates on all she consumes. The regulators across the EU consider this to be too impactful on the MNOs. So the fair use policy allows that MNOs can restrict the number of days the subscriber is roaming. The bottom line is therefore, Roam Like at Home is a solution for travelers. And the second reason is that Roam Like at Home standards consider that tariff plans allowing unlimited usage of data are more likely to be subject to organized reselling to persons not residing in the member state of the MNO. Therefore, abusive roaming could consequently lead to the withdrawal of unlimited data offers in the MNO's home member state, or restrictions to roaming. What does this mean? Well, if there are no roaming charges, it is in principle possible for any subscriber from any EU member state to get their mobile phone service from any supplier in the EU. You can imagine, if you were serious about reducing your costs, you might be inclined to do some research on the cheapest roaming packages across the whole of the EU. Let's say Italy was cheaper than Spain. As a person living in Madrid, why shouldn't I take a SIM from an Italian operator and use it in Spain, where I live? Well, imagine that this is possible. It might even become an industry. Even companies could start reselling millions of SIMs on this basis, creating a real issue for the MNO whose SIMs are more economical. It means that basically the MNO will have to pay roaming fees at a wholesale level much higher than any other MNO. Subscribers like Maria that have open data bundles will be limited in terms of the amount of data that is subject to Roam Like at Home. Let's unpick for a moment what the European Commission states to the European subscribers.
You can roam like at home whenever you are in an EU country other than the country where you actually live, your effective home.
This means you cannot roam onto another network in your own home country. Well, this is actually normal because most MNOs cover 99% of the country they have a license for.
If you move to and establish long-term residence in another EU country, you will no longer be able to benefit from Roam Like at Home offers from an operator in the country you came from. You will be able to roam like at home with a mobile subscription of your new country of residence when you travel abroad in the EU. If at home you have unlimited mobile data or very cheap mobile data, your operator may apply a safeguard limit on data use while roaming. If this is the case, the operator will have to inform you in advance about such a limit and will have to alert you in case you reach it. That safeguard limit will be high enough to cover most, if not all, of your roaming needs.
But what happens if you go over the limit set by the MNO?
Beyond this threshold, you can continue data roaming, subject to a small charge.
And what about making calls and SMS?
Beyond Roam Like at Home fair use policy, your operator may apply a small charge on roaming consumption. 3.2 cents per minute on voice call made plus VAT, 1 cent per SMS plus VAT, 7.7 euros per gigabyte of data plus VAT, less than 1 cent per megabyte. For data, this is 6.5% less, 36% less for calls, and 50% less for SMS than what was charged before June this year.
In short, folks, it's cheaper than it was before the regulation came in, even if you go over the limit. So even if eventually you do go over your fair use limits, the charges cannot be excessive. Fair use policies are intended to prevent abusive or anomalous usage of regulated retail roaming services by roaming customers such as permanent roamers. Any fair use policy should enable the roaming provider's customers to consume volumes of regulated retail roaming services at the applicable domestic retail price that are consistent with their tariff plans. The EU roaming regulation includes procedures on how operators can tackle abusive or anomalous usage at a wholesale level. MNOs cannot, however, react on an individual basis against customers or certain SIMs. MNOs can only react when significant abusive usage is detected within an MNO. Actions against these abuses are typified and subject to a special procedure, including the Home and Visited National Regulatory Authority, the European Commission and BEREC. MNOs can, however, establish fair usage based on the stable links or residence that an end user has with the country of their home provider. So, for example, to look into the subscriber's stable links when taking it into consideration if they have a fair use policy. Are they employed in an MNO country full or part-time? Are they a student? Are they a retired worker? Are they workers posted to a certain country? Subscribers can also be asked to provide proof of their residency in line with national customs, such as their billing address, or for other services provided in the HPMN country. So in short, permanent roaming is not allowed. It is likely that MNOs will limit their fair use policy to a maximum of a few months. Between 2014 and 2017, Rocco has developed several interesting reports into the EU roaming regulation and bill shock. Please ask us for more details or see our website. In our next episode on the EU roaming regulation, we are going to consider what the new EU roaming regulation covers, why in some countries do surcharges for roaming still exist, and why some countries outside of the EU, for example the Caribbean, are also included in the EU roaming regulation. Until next time, this is Jason Bryan and you've been listening to Chalk Talk from Radio Rocco.